Welcome to Literacy Live from Leeds Playhouse. My name is Lou, and if you'd like to come with me this afternoon, we're going to be going on a story adventure. If there are any grown-ups out there watching, we'd love for you to join in with our workshop today, but we'd also like you to take photos of the young people that you're working with and send them to us at Leeds Playhouse. And throughout the workshop, if there's any ideas that your children are coming up with that you'd like to share with us, we would love to hear them. And you can put those in the comment section on Facebook or on YouTube. And if there are any classes out there, any schools watching, drop us a line and let us know. And if we can, we will give you a shout out at some point during the session. So first thing is first, we need to make sure that everyone's going to be safe during this session. So everyone's going to need a little bit of space to work in. So can you just have a little look around and make sure there's nothing on the floor that you're going to stand on, that you might hurt yourself on, nothing that you're going to bump into. And it's probably worth just spreading your arms out and just very gently and slowly just moving around and make sure you're not going to hit anything or anybody. We all done that? Great. And I need to tell you about this. This is my story bell. And if I ring this bell, it means that something new or something exciting or something important has happened in our story that I need to tell you about. So if I ring this bell, I need you to stop whatever you're doing, wherever you are, and come back to the screen and listen really carefully to see what happens next. Can you remember to do that? I bet you can. Fantastic. So, our story today begins a long, long time ago. It begins in 1880. That's 120 years ago. It's a long time ago. But back then, life was a little bit different. And it was different for the children who lived in that time as well. Because back then, children were expected to dress smartly, to be nice and quiet, certainly not going out and getting dirty, and they had to do as they were told all of the time. Especially the girls. Can you imagine what it would be like to be a child in 1880, all of those years ago? And imagine that you have to be very smart, you have to be very clean, you have to be very well behaved, you have to be very quiet. Can you make me a statue with your body of a child in 1880? How do you think they would stand to show that they were being very smart and very well behaved, very quiet and always doing as they were told? How might you stand? Can you show me? And we're going to freeze when I count from 3 down to 1. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. And freeze in your statue. Your child in 1880. I'm not sure how much fun it was being a child in 1880. Can you think what that child might really want to be doing? Instead of standing smartly and being very polite and being very well behaved, what might they like to do? And you're going to create another statue for me. Maybe they'd like to be shouting, or maybe they'd like to be dancing, or maybe they'd like to be pulling funny faces. Have a quick think, and I'm going to count from 3 down to 1. And I want you to freeze again in a statue, showing me what you think they'd really want to be doing. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, freeze. Oh, I wonder what you are all doing. I bet there's some really exciting things happening. Our story today is a true story. It's about a real person. And the person in our story today was called Evelyn. But Evelyn wasn't like all of the other children. She didn't stay nice and smart and clean, and she didn't always do what she was told. In fact, she had a habit of doing whatever she wanted to. And what Evelyn wanted was to be outside in nature. She loved exploring and finding out about plants and creatures and insects and animals, anything in the outside world. You could often find her creeping through the long grass. Can you show me what that might look like? If you were Evelyn and you were out maybe in a field full of tall grass and you were creeping through, you might have to push the grass out of the way. Maybe you're walking really quietly so that the creatures that are in the grass don't see you. I wonder what you're looking for. I wonder what you might find in that long grass. Sometimes Evelyn could be found crawling through caves. If there was a dark tunnel somewhere, you could bet that Evelyn would be in there. She'd be crawling through, and it didn't matter how muddy it was on the floor. She'd be looking around and seeing what she could find. What might Evelyn find inside a muddy, dark cave? Sometimes Evelyn could be found splashing in ponds. Can you show me what that would look like? Splish, splish, splish. I wonder what she'd be looking for in a pond. Maybe there could be some creatures on the surface, or maybe in the water. What do you know that lives near a pond that she might be looking for? Can you think of somewhere else that we might find Evelyn? If she likes being outside searching for plants and creatures, where else might she go? And what else might she be doing? Have a think and see if you can come up with an action, just like we did then, to show me what she might be doing. She might be climbing up trees. Or maybe she's looking under rocks. Have a think and then show me your action, what Evelyn might be doing. I bet you've come up with some brilliant things. The one thing that Evelyn was most fascinated by was mini beasts. She loved everything about them, and she was in awe of all of the different ways that mini beasts could move. She loved the fact that some mini beasts could slide. Can you slide with me? Have a go. Don't take your feet off the floor. Have a good slide. And wonder what mini beast you can think of that slide. Maybe a slug or a snail. There are also mini beasts that wiggle. Can you have a go at wiggling? See if you can wiggle from your feet right up to your head. See if you can make every little bit of you wiggle. What mini beast might wiggle? You think maybe a worm? Can you think of any others? Oh, there are some mini beasts that buzz. 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 Their wings are going faster and faster and faster. They're making a buzzing sound. Buzz. What mini beast can you think of that make that sound and move like that? Maybe a bee, or maybe even a fly. And then there are some mini beasts that scuttle. Can you have a go at scuttling? I wonder what mini beasts scuttle. Have a go. Can you think of any mini beasts that scuttle? Maybe a beetle? Maybe a woodlouse? But there are some mini beasts that move much more gently, aren't they? They flutter. What mini beasts can you think of that flutter? I can think of one, a butterfly. Can you think of any others? Can you think of a different way that mini beasts might move? And a different mini beast that we haven't mentioned yet, that might move in a different way? Have a think and see if you can think of a word that describes the way that that mini beast moves, and see if you can come up with an action that shows me that mini beast moving. I wonder, maybe there are some mini beasts that creep. Maybe there are some mini beasts that plod. Have a think. And after 3, you can show me. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Show me your mini beast moving. Well done. Evelyn loved mini beasts so much that when she found them out in nature, she would often gather them up and take them home. So sometimes when she returned from a little adventure out in the fields or the woods, her pockets would be full of bugs. I've got a little mini beast in my pocket today. Ooh. I wonder if you can guess what it might be. I'll give you some clues. I'll describe something about it and see if that helps you. My mini beast has got wings and it can fly. This mini beast has got 2 really big eyes on the front of its head. And it's a beautiful, bright red. You got any ideas? Ready to see? Oh, Emily's got a guess. Emily thinks it might be a moth. That's a fantastic guess. Shall we have a look? I think there's lots of animals that probably have wings and are those colours. Let's see if you were right. Ready? It's a dragonfly. Can you see him? I tell you what, why don't you imagine that you've got a mini beast in your pocket? Could be any sort of mini beast at all, anything you like. And see if you can pull out your mini beast, put it between your hands, and then think of 3 things about it. Can you describe 3 things that might help somebody guess what sort of mini beast it is? And if you're in your classroom, maybe you could turn to one of your friends or somebody near you and you can guess each other's mini beasts. And if you're at home, if there's a grown-up with you, or maybe a brother or a sister, they can help as well. You give them the clues and see if they can guess what mini beast you've got. You might want to tell them how many legs it's got. You might want to tell them how it moves. You might want to tell them where you might find one of these, where they like to live. You share your descriptions with somebody else. See if they can guess. I wonder how many of you have managed to guess. I bet you came up with some really good descriptions. The thing is, back in 1880, not everybody liked what Evelyn was doing. Sometimes she would come back with her pockets full of bugs and insects in her hand, and she would be so excited, and she'd want to show all of her friends. A lot of the time, her friends weren't quite as excited as she was about the bugs and the mini beasts. Can you think how they might react when Evelyn opens her hands and shows them all of those mini beasts that she's collected? And can you make me a statue, a still picture, showing me their reaction? So maybe they're shocked. Maybe they're disgusted. Maybe they don't like mini beasts at all. Have a think and make yourself into a statue of how the other children might react to Evelyn's insects on the count of 3. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Show me your statue. And now, staying in your statue, can you think of what they might be saying out loud to Evelyn in that moment? What might they be saying? If they don't like it, they might be saying, "Ooh, get it away from me." I wonder what else people might be saying to her. So stay in your statue, make your statue again, and think of what the person might be saying. And on the count of 3, we're all going to say it all together. And we'll be able to hear maybe what Evelyn could hear from all of her friends around her. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. I bet you thought of all sorts of fantastic things that people might be saying. I wonder if all of them were very kind. The thing about Evelyn was, she didn't care. She didn't care if other people didn't like mini beasts or like what she was doing. She did it anyway. And at night, she would go into her bedroom and she would get a jar, a bit like this one, that she kept full of glowworms. And at night, they would glow up like little stars in the sky. And she would dream of being out in the world, looking at these glowworms and looking at the stars in the night sky, and being able to explore and meet all the glowworms' friends that lived with them in the night time. All she wanted to do was get out into that big wide world and see what she could find. She wanted to be an explorer. Can you think what qualities someone might need to be an explorer? What sort of person do you think you need to be a really good explorer? Maybe you'd need to be brave. I wonder if you could show me with your body what it looks like to be brave. Maybe it's something to do with being strong as well, or being proud, being ready for anything. Maybe, if you're going to be a good explorer, you need to be curious. You need to be curious about the world and everything in it. Can you make me another statue of somebody being curious? What might that look like? Maybe, I wonder what they're looking at. I wonder what they're interested in. Maybe it's something on the floor. Maybe it's something tiny in their hands. Can you think of another quality that a person would need to be a really good explorer? Something else that somebody would need to be. Maybe they would need to have lots of knowledge. Maybe they'd have to be clever. Maybe they'd have to be resilient. Because I bet exploring doesn't always go to plan, does it? I wonder what that would look like. Can you make me a statue that shows me a different quality that an explorer would have to be a really good one? On the count of 3, can you freeze in your statue showing me that quality? Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, freeze! I wonder what you are all being out there. I'm sure you've thought of some fantastic things. Evelyn dreamt about being out there in the world. And at night, her dreams were full of all the places she would go and the things that she would do. Sometimes she dreamt of being high up at the top of a mountain. Can you show me what it might look like to climb a mountain? Ooh, what might you have to do? You have to pull yourself up, reaching high. Or maybe it's a snowy mountain. Maybe you need lots of ropes and lots of equipment to climb up to the top. Can you show me an action of what it would look like to be climbing up to the top of a mountain? Sometimes she would dream about what it would be like to go into the deepest, darkest caves of the world. She was sure that there would be wonderful creatures living in there. Ooh, I wonder if she had some equipment with her, maybe a torch. Can you show me what she might look like going into a deep, dark cave and exploring? I wonder, maybe there's water dripping from the top of the cave. Ooh. Sometimes she dreamt about trekking through a jungle. I bet it's quite hot and sticky in a jungle. I bet it's not easy. She would have to be very careful where she stepped because there's all sorts of things on a forest floor and on a jungle floor. She'd have to move very carefully, maybe moving branches out of the way to get through. Evelyn dreamt of doing all of these things and more. Can you think of somewhere else that she might dream of going and exploring, something else she might want to do? And see if you can come up with an action that shows me something else that might be in Evelyn's dream. I wonder if she dreamt of exploring underwater and seeing what was at the bottom of the sea. Or maybe going high up into the tallest trees, into the canopy, to see what was happening up there. Can you show me an action? Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, off you go. I wonder if some of you were swimming through the ocean. I wonder if some of you found a way to fly through the sky and see what lives up there. When Evelyn was grown up in 1924, she heard of an expedition that was going to some islands in the Pacific Ocean that had never been explored before. And the team that were going there to see how many different mini beasts they could find. What a wonderful opportunity for Evelyn to go and do what she had always wanted to do. But even though she was so excited, when she told other people what she was doing, they didn't react in the same way. I wonder how her friends and other grown-ups might have reacted. Because in those times, women weren't explorers. Women didn't tend to leave their homes. They stayed and they cooked and they cleaned and they did the sewing, and it was thought to be much safer to stay at home. I wonder what those people would have said to Evelyn, how they would have reacted when she said, "I am going on an adventure to find new mini beasts." Can you make me a statue, just like we did earlier in our story when the children reacted differently to the bugs that Evelyn had in her hand? But this time, this is grown-ups. Can you show me how a grown-up might react to Evelyn saying that she was going on this adventure? How might they look? Maybe they'd be disapproving. There might be some grown-ups who are worried about her. There's probably lots of different reactions. Can you make me a still picture to show me a reaction? I'm going to count from 3 down to 1, and then I'd like you to freeze in your picture. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, freeze. I bet you've got lots of different reactions. Now, staying in your pictures, just like before, can you think of something that grown-up might say out loud to Evelyn? What sort of things might they say? Maybe they tell her that they don't think it's a good idea. Maybe they are worried about her and they don't want her to go. Maybe they want to try and frighten her by telling her something that might happen to her out on her adventure. Have a think. Have you got something in your head? And on the count of 3, we're going to say it all together. Are you ready? So into your statue again. And on the count of 3, tell me what you think they might say. 3, 2, 1. People said all sorts of different things to try and put Evelyn off from going on her expedition. But Evelyn didn't care what other people said or what other people did. She went anyway. So she travelled 5,000 miles to an island in the Pacific Ocean. And there, she spent all of her days collecting and searching for mini beasts, just like she'd done when she was a little girl. But this time, she had all the equipment she needed. This time, she had things like special nets to catch the insects. I wonder how fast you'd have to move a net if you were trying to catch something flying in the sky. Oh, would it be quick? Or maybe you'd have to creep up on something and move really slowly to catch a mini beast in action. She also had a magnifying glass so that she could see her little mini beasts in much more detail. Can you think of another piece of equipment that Evelyn might have had with her on that island, now she was a real explorer, that would help her when she was trying to find and catch mini beasts? And maybe you could show me in an action what she might look like if she was using it. I wonder. Maybe it was something to stop her getting lost on the island, like a compass, so she knew which way to go. Or maybe something like a special container to put the mini beasts in so that they're safe when she's collected them. Have a think and show me an action of another piece of equipment Evelyn might use. Off you go. Well done. I'd love to know what ideas you came up with. Whilst she was on this expedition, Evelyn had to sleep outside in the jungle. And at night, she would hear all sorts of different sounds around her. Can you imagine what they might be? Let's think about the sounds that she might hear coming from maybe the trees and the plants around her. Are there branches that are creaking? Maybe there are bits breaking. Maybe the wind rustling through the trees. Can you make one of those sounds or think of your own sound that you might be able to hear coming from the plants and the trees and the leaves around her? We're going to make that sound all together. You ready? Off you go. Oh, fantastic. And then, of course, out in the jungle, there would be the sounds of the mini beasts. Yeah. Maybe there's something out there that's buzzing. Maybe there are some things like crickets that are chirping. Or maybe there are cicadas. Have you ever heard of a cicada? They live up in the trees and they make a lot of noise. It sounds a bit like a violin screeching. Maybe you could make that sound. Are you ready? Let's make our insect sounds. 3, 2, 1, go. Well done. And then there are creatures that are bigger than the mini beasts. There must be all sorts out there in that jungle. Maybe Evelyn would be able to hear snakes. What else might Evelyn be able to hear? Maybe there are monkeys up in the trees. Or maybe there are different sorts of birds even higher up in the trees. Can you think of a sound that an animal might make out there in the jungle? And let's make them all together. Are you ready? Off you go. So many different sounds. But of course, Evelyn would be able to hear all of those sounds together. So why don't you choose one sound? It could be a sound from the plants and the trees, or a sound that the mini beasts make, or a sound that the bigger animals make. But choose just one, and we're going to make those sounds all together. Okay? But what I want you to do is to watch my hands very carefully. Because if I open my hands like this, a bit like a book opening, I want you to make your sound, whichever sound you've chosen. But you need to keep watching my hands, because if I close the book, I want you to stop making the sound as quickly as you can. Do you think you can do that? Let's have a go. Let's hear the sounds of the jungle. Are you ready? Did you remember to stop? Well done. We're going to do that one more time, but we're going to make it a bit trickier, because I am going to move my hands from being very low on the ground to very high up. And when my hands are very close to the ground, I want you to make your sounds very, very quietly, almost a whisper, so we can hardly even hear them. But then as I lift my hands further away from the ground, you're going to get louder and louder and louder and louder and louder until you're as loud as you can be right up here. But you need to watch my hands like a volume control to see how loud you should be. And you're still watching for me closing the book to stop the sounds. That's a lot to remember. Do you think we can do that? Let's have a go. We're going to start really, really quietly, almost a whisper. Ready? With your jungle sounds, off you go. Gonna get a little bit louder. And a little bit louder. Do we dare get even louder? Let's get as loud as we can go. And back down again. Still quite loud. When it gets softer and softer and softer and softer and watching. Well done. Fantastic. At night, just before Evelyn went to bed, when she could hear all of these sounds around her, she took a moment to write in her special diary so that she could remember everything that was happening on her adventure. It looked a little bit like this. This is the diary of Evelyn Cheeseman. And I wondered if you could help me fill in some of the blanks and help me with some of the words that she might have written that day in her diary. She's written, "Dear Diary, tonight I am camping in the jungle. It is something and something." I wonder what words you would put in there. Maybe it's about how hot it is in the jungle. Maybe it's sticky in the jungle. What words might you use? And then she says, "I also feel a little bit something." What might she be feeling at night time in the jungle? She might be feeling a little bit nervous. Or maybe she's excited for what's going to happen tomorrow. "In the morning, I am hoping to find blank and blank in the jungle to bring home to show everyone." So she's hoping to find 2 things that she's excited to show everybody at home. What might those 2 things be? There might be 2 different sorts of mini beasts that she's hoping to find. Maybe a butterfly and a spider. I wonder what you'd choose to write in those spaces. I think they will be very... She wants to take these things home to show everybody. And she thinks all of her friends and family and everybody will be very... What might they be? They might be amazed by what she's found. Or maybe they'd be proud. Maybe she's hoping that everyone would be really proud of her for what she's found on her adventure. I'd love to know what word you came up with to put in the spaces in her diary. The next day, Evelyn went out into the jungle. And as she was moving through the jungle, exploring and looking for the mini beast, she got the feeling that somebody or something was following her. I wonder what could be following her. It could be any one of those creatures that we made the sounds of that she could hear in the night. I tell you what, why don't you turn yourself into something that you think we might find in the jungle? Maybe a different mini beast or a bird or a monkey or any of the animals we spoke about. You be those creatures, and let's say I'm Evelyn. And when I turn away from you, you can move and creep towards me like you're following me and curious about what I'm doing. But if I turn around, I need you to freeze like a statue so that I don't see that you're there. Do you think you can do that? Are you ready? Being your creature, your animal. Ready? You're creeping, you're creeping. Are you all frozen? Don't want Evelyn to see you moving. Well done. This time, if I turn around, what I would like you to do is, instead of just freezing, I'd like you to hide somewhere. So you might want to hide behind a tree, or hide under a leaf, or behind a rock. Do you think you can do that? Imagine you're your creature and you're going to hide. Are you ready? Ready to creep? Are you all hiding? Behind a tree? Behind a leaf? Maybe behind a different animal or a different creature? This time, one must go. This time, I want you to camouflage yourself. That means you're going to blend into the jungle. So you might want to change what you're doing with your body. So you want to stop being your creature and become a tree. Or maybe you can become a leaf. Become the shape of something else in the jungle so that Evelyn wouldn't be able to see you. Let's have a go. Are you ready? Creep. You all camouflaged? Turn yourself into something in the jungle so I won't be able to spot you. Well done. The thing is that Evelyn was so distracted wondering about what or who was following her through the jungle that she didn't see where she was going. And as she moved through the jungle, suddenly she found herself stuck in an enormous spider's web. Can you show me what you would look like if you were Evelyn, stuck in a spider's web? Are you ready? Think about what shape you would be. It's all really sticky and you're all entwined in all of the thread. And can you show me on your face how Evelyn might be feeling? She's got herself stuck in an enormous spider's web. Is she looking worried? Or is she perhaps thinking about a way out of this situation? She knew that there were other explorers out there in the jungle, so the first thing she tried was to shout to get somebody else's attention and help. Can you think what she might shout? And she'd have to shout pretty loud to make sure somebody heard her. Can you think what words might she use? What is she going to shout? And on the count of 3, we'll all shout together. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh. She shouted, but nobody heard. So she had to try and think of a way of escaping this spider's web all by herself. Can you think how she might escape? The more she wriggled, the more stuck to the web she got. What could she do to free herself? You have a think, and in a minute you can show me how you think Evelyn escaped from the giant spider's web. Wonder if she'd find a way to cut through the threads. Wonder if she'd find a way to somehow get herself free from the stickiness of the web. Are you ready to show me how you are going to escape? Ready? Off you go. wonder if some of you have got something with you that might help you to escape. Maybe you're doing an action. Maybe you're wriggling so fast that you get away from the web. Do you remember that I told you right at the very beginning that this was a true story? So I can tell you what Evelyn actually did. There she was, stuck in the web. The first thing she tried was to bite her way through the spider's web. Oh, but that didn't work. And then she remembered that in her pocket was a nail file. That was lucky, wasn't it? She pulled out her nail file and she began to saw and file her way through each and every one of the spider's web threads until she was free. That was some clever thinking on Evelyn's part, wasn't it? And you would think that something like that might put Evelyn off from her adventures and from her wanting to be an explorer. But Evelyn didn't care. She carried on exploring the world, finding mini bees, until her hair turned white and her legs wouldn't let her walk anymore. And during her life, she found over 70,000 specimens of mini beasts. And she discovered lots and lots of new species that nobody had ever seen before. She lived an amazing life. And she lived so long and she did so much brilliant work that the Queen gave her an OBE, a special award to reward her for all her brilliant work to science. Because Evelyn didn't care what other people said or what other people thought she should do. She loved mini bees, and that's what she did her whole life. Oh, we've got some people who've joined us today. Thank you for joining us. Lorraine, Sam and Paula. Lovely to see you. I hope you've enjoyed our story today. But I'm afraid that is the end of another Literacy Live from Leeds Playhouse. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you again next week. Thank you.